Alright, so today I'm going to talk about two tiny plugins I did. One called ActiveRecord Backup and the other one is called MimetypeFu. They're really, really tiny plugins that I just wrote because I needed them. So let's start by just talking quickly about me. I'm a Rails developer. I'm a freelance and I'm available for hire. I contributed to Rails, a tiny bit to Merb. And I enjoy writing tiny plugins that are absolutely useless, but I love doing that anyway. So I'll start by the first one, ActiveRecord Backup. It's hosted on Google, so you can just go there. If you don't know, somebody asked about Google Code last time in the mailing list. I really like Google Code because you have an issue tracker. There's a wiki. You also have integration with Google Analytics, so it's really nice. Anyway, to go back to ActiveRecord Backup, the purpose, as you guessed, is to do backup of your database schema and content, and then to restore backup. That's something I needed to do, and I didn't like doing MySQL dump. So I did something else, and on top of that, we get some tiny little things, like it will export. Basically, the backup is in YAML fixtures, so they're really easy to read. You can reuse them in your test. They're also database independent, so you can load it on whatever database you want. You don't have to worry about anything. All the backups are organized by environment, so if you have production backups, they won't be mixed with your development backups. They're also organized by SVN revision, so it's really easy to go back to an old build and to get the data you had. It will become Capistrano's best friend because it's really easy when you deploy to do a backup and then restore the information whenever you want. And I found that it was very useful for staging because I can just reuse the data from my backup. It's also really nice to do debugging of your production environment. You obviously don't want to debug on your production server. So what you do is you just get the data and you just load it in your development environment on your local machine, and you can just debug. It's really cool. So how does it work? Well, you install it. Does everybody know Piston? Who doesn't know Piston? Okay, a few people. Piston basically was written by François Beausoleil. It's a French-Canadian guy. Piston is just amazing. It's actually I have it somewhere here. Piston is like SVN externals, but it's just better. So instead of doing SVN external, you just use Piston. It's just use it. If you don't use it yet, it's just awesome. Where's my presentation? If you really want to, you can use Ruby script plugin install, but I really don't like it, so I really don't recommend you do that. The cool thing with this tiny plugin is that it's also compatible with Sake. So, do you all know Sake? Or is there anybody who doesn't know Sake? Okay, so Sake was written by Chris from the blog, and Sake is just awesome. Basically, it's a system-wide rec task. Well, it's actually a rec library. And you can take your rec task and load them in Sake, and you can use them on any project you want. So, for instance, I had a plugin before called rec task that now is built into Edge, where you could just create a database based on the database.yaml file you had. And what you would do with Sake, you just do Sake install and you point it to the rec task you have or to whatever file you want to use, and it will just install the task and you can use it everywhere. So you don't have to reinstall the plugin to access the rec task, you just use it everywhere. In this case, if you want to do backup, you probably don't want to install the plugin on all your projects. So what I do is I just use Sake on all my projects and I just install it once, and that's about it. So you can do that with ActiveRecord. How does it work? Well, it's really simple. It creates 4 rec tasks, actually a bit more, but that's the one you're gonna use. Rec backup DB extract contents. So, it's really, I'm sure you figured out what that does. Rec backup DB extract schema, and then you have rec backup DB dump, so it's gonna do the extract content and extract schema, And then you have a backup DB load that would just reload a database backup. Let's look at an advanced usage example. What you want to do is, we did a backup on the production server and I want to debug it, and I want to check that on my local machine. So what I do is I get all my information. I just sync with the production server and I do rec backup DB load. Then I would just mention the build I want to load. So that's the build apparently we had issues with. And I will say, okay, get the backup from the production environment. And it will just reload everything for you. And you can just test. Let's also look at how you use it with Capistrano. Here's a very quick example that I don't know if you can read, and I don't think I can zoom in. No. So basically, I'll just quickly explain what we have here. We have three tasks. One is backup. So what it does is just go to the current release folder and do rec backup db dump and do it in the production environment. So we create my backup with all my information. Here I have another task saying move backup. So go to the current release and move the production backup to a specific folder that I have set up with all my backups on my server. And then I just use the before deploy callback. So before there's any deployment, do the backup and move or copy the backup. So every time I deploy my application, there's a backup that is done. I don't need to care about it, and it's just there for me. I could even have another task that would just clean them up, but I mean, we don't really need that. I just like keeping all the backups. So, just before we're done with this one, just to show you how it's organized, you probably don't see much. So basically at the root of your Rails folder, now there's a new backup folder that will show up with the environment folder. So here we have the development folder, probably gonna have a production folder. Then underneath you have a list of folders with the build, so that's VN revision. So like here we have build 55, and inside that you're gonna have two folders, one with all the features, so all the tables will be here, and then here you're gonna have one file with the schema. So you can always go and check only one file if you want, reload only specific files, and just have fun with that. Do you have any questions? I think it's very straightforward. So just let's move on to another tinier plugin called MimetypeFu. It's also hosted at Google Code. The purpose of MimetypeFu is really, really simple. It's just to get the mime type and the content type of a file. So why would you want to do that? Well, on most of my project, I use attachment-foo. I just love it. It's just nice, and Rick also did an amazing job. Works very well with S3. Anyway, the problem with attachment-foo is that it's expecting you to send your files using CGI. So you need to use the browser to do an upload, and that's how it checks on the content type. Now, if you're using MERB, or if you're just migrating files from a legacy system, for instance, you're not going to use CGI, and you're not going to have a content type, so you cannot use the validation that comes up with attachment-foo. So you need a very simple way to just get the MIME type because you want to validate your files. And the other case is when you use Flash to handle your uploads. Flash is a bit dumb and actually has a bug in it, and it will not give you the MIME type when you do an upload. Actually, it would just give you the wrong MIME type. So you probably want to validate the files that are uploaded by Flash, and a lot of people want to have nice Flash uploader with a lot of fancy stuff moving around. So you would still want to validate the files. So I just came up with MIME type. And the other reason is just because, I don't know, maybe you just like me and you want to use my plugin. It's a dumb plugin. If you use Ruby, there's another plugin called, I think it's just a gem called MimeType that does more or less the same. The different thing is that I use the system just to check the file. Basically, if you use Linux or if you use Mac, I would just use your OS to get the MIME type because you have all of that built in. But if we can't get that, or if you don't have a file and you just want to check on the path, and you'll see that. I also have a huge library of all the extensions that are known and their content type, so we can just verify that this way. So this is how it works. You just open the file, and so you get the file. Then you just say file MimeType ? And then the file, and then you get your content type. You're happy. You can just check that it validates or not. What you can also do is just to give the file name. If you just want to check, it's kind of a dumb check, but if you really want to, you can do that. So here we do file MimeType ? test.jpg, and we just get the content type, and that's it. Any questions here?
On air backup, how big are your fixture files going to be? Because I've seen the YAML portion, I've seen SIG breakdown with data over 7 or 8 minutes.
Right.
Like there's a bunch of hacks in Ruby gems.
Yeah.
To the file work. Have you had any problems?
I did not use it on huge project when you have huge tables, to be honest with you. And I would probably not recommend not to use it. YAML are really nice if you want to use them, but if it's just to keep a backup of your huge tables with all your logs, it's kind of pointless. What you can probably do is just to back up some tables. So you can just hack the plugin. I don't think right now you can do that, but you could just say, okay, do a backup of this, this, and this model, and you should be fine. Any questions? Absolutely not. I love it. I almost did a speech on ActiveRecord because it's much more interesting than my tiny things. I was talking with Rick last week, and I'm gonna help him changing it a bit to make it more compatible with MERB, for instance, and all the the reason why I write MimetypeFu was to actually get ActiveRecord to work fine. With S3, I use it on at the moment 3 projects, and we don't have any problem. I use a lot of things that are also not documented. You can have temporary URLs with S3. And I use it with Image Science and with RMagic, depending on the project, and just worked fine with me. What kind of problem did you have? What kind of errors you get? There's one bug right now with Image Science, that is a known bug. If you upload a GIF file, it will transcode. Well, it will create a PNG for you, but in the database, it will still tell you that it's a GIF file or something like that. And then if you try to get it, it's not gonna work. Well, I'm running. Well, it's Nginx and Fedora with Mongrel, and I don't have this problem. But if you have Mongrel, But I think if you have the latest version of Mongo cluster, it will tell you that. It should warn you. Yes. But I think the easiest thing is just to make sure you have the latest version of Mongo cluster, and you get a warning. If you have this warning, you know what to do.
That concludes this episode of the SD.RB podcast. See you next time.